Okay, welcome to the very final part of this two-day, very intense conference we've had here with lots of information to take home, lots of experiences that you have shared, hopefully also generated some new friendships and increased your network of contacts. I have been asked to do a quick summary of the 2 days, and that's very difficult given so much that we have heard here. But before I start that, I should tell you that those of you who would like to bring back the poster that you had can do so. After this closing session, if you go outside where the posters were and talk to Johannes, he will make sure that you get your posters and can take them home with you. What I will present here are just about 6 slides or so, just trying to summarize this very rich exchange of information and experiences we've had over the last 2 days. So bear with me if I have forgotten some important points. I'm sure that you have more to add, and we'd be very happy to hear more of that. You can send your comments to Till or Johannes, and I'm sure they'll incorporate them into the final version of this presentation before we put it up online. I want to start by saying that the mission of the REDD project is still relevant. As we heard from Kevin Conrad in the first morning, developing countries hold over 70% of global abatement potential, with REDD+ and land use being more than 50% of the solution. So if we want to keep the increase in temperature below 2 degrees, we do need to focus on what can be done in developing countries and what can be done in REDD. We also heard that we cannot manage what we can't and don't measure. So it's crucially important that we try to get better information on what's happening in our forest and land use change in countries. But very encouragingly, we have heard that countries can significantly develop their capacities or increase their capabilities within a short time frame. But we've also still heard that many countries need to advance further to be able to participate in a full-fledged greenhouse gas accounting system. Just to bring a couple of slides of the REDD project, as you can see, they had a large number of capacity development events in a very short period of time. And despite that very short period of time, we have some very significant outcomes in terms of progress on several areas that are crucial to implementing a greenhouse gas inventory in developing countries. The green, as you remember, was the status prior to the project, and the red arrows show the improvement that's happened over this very short period of time. So substantial progress has been made in a relatively short time. And as we also heard mentioned, the REDD is a good example of what we call REDD early movers. They have been able to move ahead and even anticipate some of the decisions that came out from Warsaw in the capacity building that they have provided to countries. We then had a large number of presentation and discussion on country experiences. What are the needs of the countries? What are the lessons they have learned during the project? What are some of the other critical elements that are needed to move forward, not only on creating greenhouse gas inventories, but also on reducing the emissions? They're very different, the countries that we have here in this room, in terms of their needs, in terms of their experiences, but there were a couple of commonalities, particularly when we talk about critical needs. And I think I just wanted to highlight it, sort of grouped under 3 areas. One was the high political will, coupled with national ownership of any activities that are taking place. Unless you have high political will, this is not going to take off. We heard about countries that had started setting up institutions, but then the institutions didn't have the money to pay the staff or even to go out in the field and do the work that they needed to be done there. So we need the high political will to engage in the process, but also to allocate the resources that are needed for it. We obviously need technical capacity, And that's not limited to data collection. Analysis and reporting obviously have to be part of it, the management of the information, but it goes beyond that too. We had a couple of points that were made here in that greenhouse gas inventories or national forest monitoring systems need to build on existing information, existing systems, existing knowledge that's available in the country. We're not starting from scratch, but we need to make sure that what we already have is incorporated in any system that we do set up for monitoring forests and for greenhouse gas inventories. We also heard that it's crucial to get not just information on what's happening in terms of carbon change, but also what is there in terms of the drivers of deforestation and forest degradation, because otherwise we have no way of dealing with that and for reducing the emissions that derive from those. This is needed, of course, both at the national level and the subnational level to support the planning and decision making and the policies to actually address these drivers. And thirdly, that we need the appropriate institutional setup. And that has been an issue in many countries. I think in the beginning, perhaps we've been taking a too narrow an approach to this. We need to make sure that all the relevant stakeholders and institutions are engaged and are engaged effectively. So that's not just limited to the forestry sector or the environment sector or to the climate change ministry, if there is such in a country. It does also include those ministries that are dealing with agriculture, that are dealing with finance, that are dealing with law. And of course, not just the national stakeholders, also the local stakeholders, the institutions that are involved in this and are being affected by any actions that might be taken in order to reduce emissions. But that's sort of going a little bit beyond the greenhouse gas inventories, but it are certainly things that need to be kept in mind when you set up that institution that will also deal with the reporting aspect. We also heard, particularly highlighted in the video we saw from DRC, that measurement, just taking the measurements, is a real challenge in many countries. Difficult access, difficult to train the people, getting the logistics sorted out to do that. But it's not the only challenge, and perhaps a bigger challenge is actually dealing with those drivers of deforestation and forest degradation, and particularly dealing with the illegal activities. We heard the example of charcoal making in several countries that were, at least in some cases, illegal and aspects that would be difficult to deal with. We also heard a lot about the political context and what is happening in UNFCCC, and particularly the tremendous progress that was made in Warsaw when it comes to REDD and when it comes to the decisions related to measurement, reporting and verification. And there is some guidance also to countries on how to start implementing these decisions or following the advice that has been provided so far. And the first one was, of course, to start with what you already have and start improving over time, sort of a stepwise approach to matters. And to focus on developing a consistent inventory. We had heard it had to be consistent on many different levels. And that perhaps accuracy would come with later iteration, not as the first focus on it. Although we also heard it's important to have them as accurate as possible because they have to form the basis, in the end, for some result-based incentives or payments even. There was an important message, I think again came out in the video, that we need to combine remote sensing with field data for validation. It's not always easy to see what's happening on the ground when you look from up on top in the clouds. We heard a lot about the IPCC guidelines and the guidance that has been provided from IPCC and how that might help implement these decisions that were reached in Warsaw. And you will find much more information on that in the presentations that will be available on the website. And finally, there was an encouragement to make good use of the review process. So don't necessarily see that as an obstacle, but see that as an opportunity to have a look at what has been done, to look at what might be the inconsistencies where it's possible to improve and take that into account. So there were lots of challenges. There were hopefully also lots of good advice and good sharing of experiences between countries that have dealt with some of these and found a way around them. And we heard some very encouraging news of that. But I just want to leave you with one last quote that we heard from one of the villages, I think, in DRC, that said, REDD+ is a great opportunity to save our forest heritage. So with that, I would like to finish my summary of the last 2 days. Thank you.
So my job is to basically say thank you and close the meeting. So the first group of people I want to thank are the brave countries of the CD REDD, the first movers. Thank you for being willing to step out, to present your data, to be critiqued, to be reviewed, all of those things that can be scary, but are so critical for us to move REDD forward. Without this kind of process, without the MRV process going forward, all of the discussions about REDD in the UNFCCC are almost wasted. We can talk about policy all day long, but if we can't measure and show the world, and when I mean the world, I mean our communities, I mean our governments, and the international community more widely, if we can't show that we're actually changing the world around us for the good, we can't expect support. So we have to be able to do this, and this is the most important foundation we have before us. So thank you, brave countries. I also have to thank a brave donor. Germany supported us very early. And when we were just understanding that this was going to be coming down the road, and they've been with us from the beginning and are working with us to keep it going. And that's really important. And I want to encourage other potential donor countries to follow that kind of leadership, not only to support this, but to look for other innovative things in other places and with other groups that are focused on the key principle, which is how do we build measurable capacity and measurable progress in countries. And I'm going to go off on a little mini rant here, and you'll forgive me because this is about thank you. But capacity building typically ends up to be a workshop, a paper, and a lot of people flying on planes, and everyone goes home, and $1 million was spent. Okay? And it happens year after year after year, and sooner or later you're at $70 million, and you have some more papers, and you have some more guidelines, and you have some more, but nothing tangible was accomplished. Nothing stays in our countries. Basically, the consultants are happy, everyone else is happy, but nothing stays in our countries. And what we as a coalition wanted to try to show was, well, what is the real capacity building that we need? What is it that's going to stay in our countries, and what is going to help us actually implement REDD? That's the kind of capacity building we want. We don't need another workshop on a plan. We don't need another workshop on a report. We need capacity building that stays in our countries and helps us on our own implement REDD. And so that's for us what the whole CD REDD project is about, is demonstrating how capacity building should work, having clear metrics that lead us on the road to the implementation of REDD. The next group I need to thank are the presenters. It is hard to present. All of you know. The time you put into your presentations, some of you are writing your presentations all the way to the last minute, Thelma. And but I want to thank all of you who presented, because we all know what a challenge that is, and then to be up in front and take the questions, etc. So thank you for doing that. I also have to thank FAO for being willing to host this, and I have to thank Mette. It's not an easy job to get up and chair, and she has taken a lot of her time to prepare, a lot of her time to be here, and we're going to give an applause for everyone at the end, but I want a special applause for Mette and for FAO for being host here. All right. Okay, and finally, I want to thank the CfRN team, and particularly the division of the CD REDD. You guys have done an excellent job. It's not easy to put together a conference like this. It's not easy to work 24 hours on the fly to make sure that everybody's problem is at least heard. We try to resolve most of them, but we can't resolve all of them. So I want to thank all of you. I think you guys should stand up. Everyone that's part of the team, stand up. Come on, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay, thank you. Okay, and now I just want the last round of applause for everybody. This has been an excellent dynamic, people working together. We can't get people out of their coffee halls because they're having so much fun talking, and if you listen, they're talking about substance. They're not chatting about nothing. So, I mean, and the friendships and the smiles, this is the way it should be, so thank you.
Thank you for watching. For more information, see cdred.org.